Hello, Dr. Chris Arnold here, and I've been asked to do this video to discuss a very serious health condition called diabetes. We see a lot of patients in our office that come in with this condition that really struggle with it, that really take a ton of medication. They aren't seeming to really getting any better, and it has a lot of serious side effects of the condition and also with the medication. We actually have a great track record of not only getting people healthy, but also they're having their blood work come down, and also most people can get off the medication completely. But you have to understand the disease, the process, and actually the proper steps, and we'll outline those of actually how to really beat diabetes for good. So the first thing is just to understand how broad and why we see so many people with diabetes, because it's very common. 1 out of every 4 Americans has a problem with their blood sugar. And it's only expected to get worse by 2050. It's supposed to be 1 in 3 Americans. And the first thing that goes off of my mind is when I see something that's going to increase and get worse is must mean whatever we're doing is not working. So we actually have to have a better way of doing it. And truthfully diabetes is not really a disease you die from. You can if your blood sugar goes way too low, but it's really the side effects of what diabetes does. This damage to your kidneys, damage to your peripheral circulation, your eyes, all these things that are actually what causes a huge burden on your overall health and over your overall body, which leads to increased expenditures actually in healthcare overall with trying to help and deal with diabetes. And again, the truth about it is it's not helping and the problems are only getting worse. It is the second largest endocrine disorder. A lot of people falsely believe that it's actually a genetic condition just because your parents have it, grandparents have it. That is not the truth. Genetics plays 0% role in diabetes. It's a lifestyle disease that has a lot to do with your endocrine system, meaning your pancreas. And it's basically a liver, pancreas, and brain disorder. That's actually what is about this. So insulin is really the key component in that. That's what everyone kind of misses. We only want to talk about blood sugar or giving people insulin, but it's your insulin levels is what is the damaging part about your body, because insulin is a hormone and it actually affects things like your other hormones, your estrogen, progesterone, your testosterone. It actually can affect fertility. It can actually affect thyroid function, how you gain weight, how your body reacts to stress and damage, your cortisol levels. All of that is related to your insulin levels. And that's what we're soon going to discuss, is just giving someone more insulin only feeds this process, makes this problem even worse, is not the best solution, and that's why so many people are getting worse. So blood sugar, again, is not fatal on its own, but it could cause kidney function, poor digestive function, decreased immunity. Most people get more sick if they have increased again, insulin in their system, dysbiosis in the colon, and actually skin disorders are very common. Now there are 2 types of diabetes. We've got to be very clear about that. There's type 1. These are what is called early onset, or basically kids or juveniles who are actually born with some type of diabetes issue. That usually means something had damaged the pancreas. It's usually an autoimmune issue where your immune system was attacking your own pancreas and has destroyed it. When that happens, your body has 0 or very limited capacity to secrete any type of insulin, which you need small amounts of. So your body really struggles to adapt and handle any type of blood sugar issues. Now these, again, they need some type of insulin to survive. These are, again, the harder cases to help out with, but we've had some success with this. Now it's more the type 2, which is the common. 80% of the people who have diabetes have more type 2. That's what's called adult onset, meaning you didn't have it early in your life. It wasn't until your 30s, 40s, and most people in the 50s and 60s when they develop some type of blood sugar issue. And again, basically it comes down to again, it's a brain and liver and pancreatic disorder where your pancreas has been basically for so long producing high levels of insulin that, number one, your cells in your body become very immune, very mute to that high levels of insulin. Basically, if I just keep screaming at you very loud for days at a time, you're soon going to start to tune me out. You're not going to hear me anymore, and that's what happens to your body. And then also what eventually happens is your pancreas is producing things so much and it works so hard that basically it ends up being fatigued and it basically ends up being squashed. So now all of a sudden your body has now become insulin resistant. It doesn't hear insulin anymore, and now all of a sudden your pancreas loses the ability to produce any insulin at all. So these are the people who, again, have been on diabetic medications for 10, 15 years. Now all of a sudden the levels keep going up, and these are the people who need extra insulin now. They're going from not insulin resistant now to insulin deficient, more back to a type 1. And again, these cases are a little harder to treat because, again, that pancreas being so squashed, but we do have ways to actually help and rebuild the pancreas, and yes, it is possible. Also, too, is talking about just the current paradigm. We know the current medications, whether it's metformin or some of the new medications like Avandia and other ones, are basically not only not helping the problem, it actually makes it worse. Just like these statistics up here show that if you actually look at your pancreas after taking some of these medications, you actually start to develop, actually just after a few years, precancerous cells in your pancreas. I mean, is that really, we're trading diabetes now for cancer? And we know many 13, 14 different studies looked over, I think it was almost 200,000 diabetic patients, that they actually have an increased mortality rate by 43% of dying of a cardiac arrest from taking these medications. So basically you end up not only trading for diabetes, now all of a sudden you're now increased risk of dying from a heart attack, 43% increase, and all other causes of death increased by 13%. Again, these all come from these medications. If you don't believe me, just watch the TV a few minutes and you'll see all types of attorney article or attorney ads about Avandia. If you've taken Avandia in the past, call me and we got a lawsuit, we can get you lots of money, right? It's never a good thing you have a medication ended up being in the hands of a lawyer, because there's been some serious effects of that. So Avandia was pulled off the market. It only ended up causing 80,000 people to die before they realized it's not a good thing. The question is, how much longer are we going to realize till these other diabetic drugs are also going to be taken off the market? Because again, not only they don't help diabetes, but they increase your risk of a lot of other serious effects. So to me, diabetic medication goes right up there with as far as medications who are not only useless, we'll show why, but are actually more detrimental. So taking it not only doesn't correct the problem, it actually makes a lot of other things worse. And then we look at the common other advice that people are given for diabetes conditions that not only doesn't help, it actually makes it worse, and it doesn't make any sense. Like conventional wisdom says, oh yeah, eat all the sugar you want, eat all the stuff, and just when your blood sugar goes up, just take more medications. That doesn't sit well with me. There has to be a reason why your body's reacting that way, and just feeding the system is not going to be a solution. Also recommending things like artificial sweeteners. Yeah, just don't change the way you're eating. Just substitute Splenda and all these other artificial sweeteners to make up for it. And that's the exact wrong thing. We know without a doubt Splenda causes, and artificial sweeteners cause more weight gain, and they also cause more craving. So here's a person that struggles already with sugar issues, craving sugars, and what are we doing? We're feeding them something artificially that actually makes the sugar cravings even worse. And obviously, if you've been diabetic, probably been told, oh yeah, a low-fat diet, you need to stay away from fat. And that's the exact opposite of what we're going to show you need to do, and we'll explain why. But simply is, if you can't eat fats, you're supposed to stay away from proteins. Really, the only source of food you're left is carbohydrates, and especially your simple carbohydrates like your grains and breads are really what drives insulin levels through the roof. So not a very good advice for that. And also too is we're missing the point with current testing systems. Everyone wants to talk about the fasting glucose level, right? When I'm not eating, how high is my blood sugar level? Yes, that's important. We don't like to see it be over 100, but it's really not telling us how your body is adapting, how it handles sugar levels. So that's really a more accurate test would be what's called postprandial glucose levels. Really, after you eat, how high does that blood sugar level really go? If it goes up into the 200-300 level, your body really struggles. It really can't adapt to actually increase blood sugar levels at all. There's actually what's called a fasting insulin blood test. Again, it should be between 2 and 4. This shows, again, how much insulin is in your system. The higher the insulin level shows the more your body is trying to deal and adapt to sugar levels, and it also shows how resistant your cells are to insulin, right? The more your brain has to scream at your cells to take in sugar shows, again, those insulin levels will creep up, how deficient your entire system is working. Leptin is a very important hormone. We'll get to that in just a second. Hemoglobin A1C and also vitamin D are more important testing and more accurate testing of this condition than actually fasting glucose levels. To understand diabetes and how it works, you have to understand this Swiss watch principle, where your entire body works together as a unit, right? You just can't separate your pancreas from the rest of your body. You can't separate your liver from the rest of your body. You can't separate your brain from the rest of the body. They all have to work together to balance these things. So we also have a video on our website here talking about hormones. And a lot of people that struggle with hormone levels. And guess what? We talk about insulin in that aspect of it. And basically, we also give a class talking about heart disease. And we're going to talk in that heart disease class about leptin, which we're going to talk about here in just a couple minutes. So all these things, whether it's heart disease, infertility, diabetes, they all kind of go together. It just shows there's a breakdown in your body and the way it's working. So instead of trying to have a system where we break down just how your body functions as far as blood sugar level, we have to look at the big picture. Because if your pancreas is not working well, a lot of other things aren't going to work well. If you have one hormone like leptin that's out of balance, it's going to affect your pancreas, it's going to affect a lot of hormones, it's going to affect your brain. So we have to cast this big broad net and look at your body in a total. You're just not a person with diabetes, you're a total system. We have to look to see what's broken down, because not every diabetic patient suffers from the same condition. We have to understand which one of these gears are not working well to kind of bring it together. Right? So again, we talked about some major hormones: insulin, thyroid, your estrogen, progesterone levels, serotonin, adrenaline, cortisol, and actually vitamin D is a hormone. Again, these are all the hormones that are actually going together. And really the one that's missing and no one really wants to talk about is leptin, right? You ask someone about leptin, most people don't know. I bet you ask your medical doctor if he understands what leptin is and has not a clue. Leptin is a very, very important hormone in your body that's actually given off by your fat cells. If you really look at it in Greek or Latin, leptin means thin. Basically, the higher the level your leptins are, basically the thinner you are. And leptin basically is a signal from your fat cells to your brain that says, I am full, stop eating, we need no more energy, and basically your body feels that satiety. It feels full, you don't want to eat or consume any more food. What happens is if that leptin signal is blocked from your brain, we'll talk about why that happens, or those fat signals aren't signaling the right thing, your body still keeps craving, it still wants more, it still wants more food, and that's where you're eating more than what you should be, and that's where you get increased energy loads, and then that energy loads get stored in fat cells, get stored as increased blood sugar, and really drives this whole system out of balance, all right? And the cool thing and the neat thing about leptin is it's very changeable, and we'll talk in just a minute. One of the best things to change leptin levels is actually exercise. If you exercise, leptin levels go way up. Right after you exercise, do you feel like eating? No. Why? It's because that leptin signal in your brain actually is being given off when you do that. And the other way to actually control leptin and stuff is actually decrease fruit. Here's the quick thing about it is fruit does not trigger leptin. Basically, if you eat other foods, you'll fill up and eventually the trigger will get off. But the fructose, the fruit sugars in fruit, does not trigger leptin levels to be signaled to your brain. So you can eat lots of fruit and not even feel full, but even though your blood sugar is really rising, so you get that kind of counterbalance. So that's one thing that we always recommend our diabetic patients is to try to limit and also probably completely eliminate fruit from your diet, at least for a short period of time, to balance your leptin levels. Okay? So before I go into it, we actually have a really neat program and stuff that's actually going to show you actually how we start to make changes in this. I kind of given you a couple little tidbits about that. I want to kind of just take a second to give you a demonstration of actually how this system works in your body, and it's going to make sense of what we do to change that. So what I want to do is a quick demonstration of actually how blood sugar is actually made in your body, how detrimental effect it is, and basically how your body functions and works. So really the whole process starts with is actually you consuming food, okay? For our analogy is let's just say that these little balloons that I have are basically glucose things. Glucose is your storage form of energy. Basically your body takes in food, converts food into glucose. Glucose travels to your cells. Cells use this as kind of the energy of the cell. That's what kind of allows your cell to actually make energy, keep things running, and keeps things functioning. So it's really important in your body to have enough of this glucose circulating and in your cells so cells can actually work, again, to fuel the body. So let's back up to the very beginning process. The first thing you have to understand about glucose is not every food you place in your mouth it turns into the same amount of food. If you look at our heating sources for our houses, right? We have wood, we have natural gas, we have coal, we have all kinds of different things. Not all of them are equate to the same energy outputs, right? The same BTUs. Same thing on our body. So a quick analogy is just like proteins. Proteins your body digests very slowly, okay? And proteins basically take a lot of energy to break down, so your net effect of the energy output to break down a protein to what you get is actually a small amount. So we'll say maybe it's equivalent of a little piece of protein is equivalent to like 3 balloons, okay? So that goes into this little basket here is like our blood level, right? How much glucose we actually have in our blood level. The next thing we need to talk about is fats. Fats is the other type of component of food you can have. Again, fats are very high energy. You get a lot of glucose out of fats, but fats are broken down very, very slowly, all right, which is another important thing to consider, is how fast your blood sugar rises. So if we fill this basket up very, very slowly, your body hasn't a chance or ability to actually kind of adapt and actually handle that and basically move those glucose actually into the cells, right? So fat cells, like I said, you get a lot of energy from, but they're very slow burning, right? The other thing is with fats really trigger a lot of leptin signals. So that's why you can eat a small amount of fats, right? Take a handful of peanuts or nuts, especially almonds are one of my favorite, right? Eat a little bit of a handful of almonds and you only need a handful and you feel full, right? Take a whole bag of potato chips, which we'll get in a second, is more of a simple carbohydrate. You need a great big bag and still not even full afterwards. So fats, very slowly digestible. You just get very, very little things from time to time. Glucose in your system, your body can handle it very well, right? Then the last thing is our carbohydrates. There's actually 2 types of carbohydrates. There's one which is more of a complex carbohydrates. Those are your vegetables, right? They have lots of starches in them. They have lots of fiber in them. Again, harder for your body to break down and get the energy out of. So again, you're going to get more energy out of vegetables, maybe a little quicker than fats, but still, it's not going to be a huge dump into your system, right? And then last but not least is basically your simple carbohydrates, which is your grains, your breads, your sugars, and even your fructose and fruit sugars. And basically it's equivalent of like taking this whole bag. As soon as you eat a piece of bread, as soon as you eat something that has sugar, it's like an immediate dump of all the sugar into your system, right? What's your body going to do, right? It has to struggle to actually adapt. We got this big load, we got all this sugar in our system, right? Now it has to adapt and has to do something to get rid of it, right? So we got this in our system, right? We got all this glucose in our system. Whether it's slowly put in there with fats and proteins, whether it's largely dumped in there all at once with your grains and your pastas and your breads and your simple carbohydrates, makes a big difference. But one way or another, your body has to get this into cells, right? Let's take an example. I'm a cell, right? Cell, I'm using lots of energy, right? I need to consume even more energy in. So whether or not there's insulin in the system, your body and your cells will actually absorb up a certain amount of glucose on its own, okay? So it's going to take in a few of them, just like this, right? All of a sudden now I'm not using much energy, so I'm just going to hold this, all right? But then all of a sudden we got all this big dump in here, and it's like, I'm full, I can't take any more. So your body says, I can't have this floating in the blood, so we need to put more back into the cells. So that's when actually insulin is produced. What insulin does, it actually opens up cells to actually make them take on more glucose than what they actually normally would. So it's equivalent of like shoving these things and giving me more, because they want more and more stuff. And it's like, again, eventually I can only handle so much, right? So your body says, but I still have more blood sugar, right? So what do we have to do? We have to even get more insulin. So it's like I'm even being open even more. It's like 10 guys trying to shove all these balloons and all these places to get me filled up, right? Eventually, your body is so filled up, and basically every time it sees more insulin, what's it do? No, I don't want any more. It becomes what we call insulin resistant, right? That even the insulin gets in there, it can't open up the cells anymore and feed more sugar into the system. So basically your body produces more and more and more insulin, and that's again what affects your pancreas, and again your pancreas eventually fatigues. So really the problem with diabetes comes down to is one, how fast we're filling this bucket. Basically how fast we're putting glucose into your system, into your blood sugar, and also how quickly your cells can absorb it, right? If your cells are moving and using lots of energy, it'll actually absorb and take it up naturally. You're not going to need very much insulin. But if you have no usage in your cells, your basic cells are not using very much insulin at all, or very much glucose at all, and we are dumping tons and tons of it in because of our diets not being correctly, then that's when your insulin levels start to take over, start to bombard these cells, make these cells do things that are not naturally they're supposed to design to. And then again, the effect of insulin on the rest of your system. Insulin is a hormone, affects your brain, affects your mood, attitude. We talked about kidneys, talked about eyesight. That's all insulin damage that's actually left there. Eventually, again, your pancreas dies and again fails, and then you need it to take insulin synthetically. So again, we'll get into it here in just a second, really the criteria, but understand, again, dietary, how fast we're filling this up with your glucose makes a big difference, how much your body is actually, its cells are taking in. If we work on both ends of this, decrease the sugar coming in, increase the way your cells are taking in glucose, that's when we start to really turn this disease around. We take stress off the pancreas, we start taking stress off your blood system because it doesn't have those levels in there, and really turn it around and really get you off the medication that's really not solving the issue. Because the medication, and let me make this point quickly, I almost forgot about this, what does the medications actually do? Medications are this. Basically, all the medications do is actually increase insulin levels after you eat. Basically, the medications stimulate that pancreas. So again, we have all these things that's already, this process is already filled up. We've got so much insulin already. Eventually, if you use more and more and more and more and more and more insulin, just like yelling at me, you've got your attention, right? You need more and more insulin to get your cells to open up, and eventually it will. But again, what you're doing, and use the analogy of someone, is like a racehorse, right? If you whip a racehorse to get to the final stretch, right, it does very well. You can get more production out of it. But if you keep whipping that horse for 3-4 hours, what's eventually going to happen? It's going to fatigue, it's going to fail, and then that horse is going to collapse. That's what we're doing, is by feeding your pancreas all of these diabetic medications, all you're doing is whipping it to make more insulin, but eventually that will kind of fail. And that's why, again, most people start metformin for 5-10 years, and eventually they move up into taking shots with insulin, the whole 9 yards. So it's not really the best scenario. So let's spend a second, let's talk about what we can do, what we've done in our office to have great success with turning this system around. Alright, so let's talk about the program here that, again, we've just had immense success getting sugar levels back down, decreasing insulin levels in your body, increasing how your body is sensitive, resensitizing your body to insulin levels, and really getting people healthy. Just a quick little side note, if you can't read all these slides, there should be a link right below this where you can actually download the exact slides and the handouts that we have for this class. So feel free to do that and take full advantage of that. So really our program is actually designed over 4 components of it. Really, one is dietary things. We'll talk exactly why we need that. There's also certain supplements that really help this process immensely. Some really cool, neat things I can discuss with that, talking about exercise and also about chiropractic. What is chiropractic role in this whole process, which is a very good. So the other important thing I want to point out to you is this is all these aspects are equally important. Yeah, you can do it just by exercise. Yeah, you can do it with just supplements. Yeah, you can do it with just diet. But really, when you put these all together is really when we get the biggest amount of change and really see some amazing things. So first of all, with dietary things, again, there's going to be only specific foods that we're going to be limited to, at least short term when you're on this process. Basically, the foods are going to be what's called low glycemic index, meaning they produce low sugar levels or glucose in your bloodstream. So there's also going to be very little fruit, actually almost no fruit for the first couple of months is really the most beneficial. Really, again, going back to what we were talking about with this, this is a chart here that shows over time actually how certain foods produce glucose in your bloodstream. The ones that are in the red are the high glucose, high GI foods. Actually, more and more foods are actually being labeled with GI indexes, so that's a neat thing to actually start looking for. And the higher the number shows how quickly or the more blood sugar is released by consuming this type of food or product. So the red one shows, again, a carbohydrate, a lot of sugar. All of a sudden it's dumped into your system, and then you get the quick crash afterwards. The orange one is more indicative of a protein or a fat. You don't get as much of a sugar release at the beginning, and then it kind of slowly tapers and trickles. Again, it's more of a trickle effect, and your body can handle versus something really quickly, really dumping a lot in, like your breads and your pastas, right? If you just taste bread and put it on your tongue, what does it do? It tastes sweet automatically, right? So automatically those sugars, the grain is being broken down into sugars on your tongue, and it's automatically starting to convert to sugar that quickly. Right? So just give you a quick range of certain foods, and again, there's a handout. In our handout, there's actually a great big list of about 200 different foods and their GI indexes. But again, GI indexes that are highest are breads, about 100, pasta, refined food, sugars, and actually fruit juices are on there. Milk is about middle level, and then your proteins, fats, fibers, whole vegetables, nuts, and seeds are on the lower end. They can be anywhere from about 10 to 15 to sometimes 30 or 40 GI indexes versus, again, your 100. So you can kind of see comparison how that works. Again, here's some dietary guidelines. Again, it's in the handout. You can read over this. So again, if you forget what I discussed in this video, you can actually just download this and do that. But again, here's a list of fructose that's actually in certain fruit. Again, you want to limit this as much as possible. On average, I try to tell people probably less than 25 grams of fructose a day is what you need. So like a lemon and lime have virtually none. Things like watermelon, mango, and actually if you eat one fig will give you 25 grams of sugar immediately, right? So you got to be very careful in the food and the fruits you eat. Like I said, I recommend no fruit at all. Quick personal story is for years, probably for the last 10 years, I make a fruit smoothie in the morning where I put fruit in a blender and blend it up. And for many, many years, I just dumped as much fruit as I could into this blender to drink it. And I thought it was great because it was all natural. I mean, it was good stuff. But what I found is probably about an hour or two after I ate all this tons of fruit, you know, I started to feel tired, and I basically was like, when's lunchtime? I could barely make it even 3 hours before I started to wane. And because it was all that sugar, right, basically back to this chart here, basically I had all this rise of sugar because it's fruit sugar, and basically I was crashing a couple hours later. Basically, I've kind of really augmented my fruit smoothie in the morning. I still make them on a regular basis. I put a lot less fruit in it, basically only a handful or two of fruit in it. Most of it is actually, I throw a lot of vegetables in there, like spinach, like broccoli, or spinach, and things like cucumber are very satisfying with very little taste. You can put a little bit of kale in it if you want. Some lettuce that actually can be thrown in there. So these are just some good vegetables you can throw in there to get a little bit more bulk, get a little bit more volume, some fiber, and it's not going to have that same blood sugar release. And actually, the other thing I throw in there is actually a lot of fats, and I'll tell you which fats particularly. And what I found when I started eating fats and putting fats in there like coconut oil and hemp seed, basically all of a sudden now, instead of feeling hungry about 10 o'clock, I could go to about 12 o'clock. And then eventually, like now, is I eat sometimes very early in the morning, 6:30. It's probably 2:30, 3 o'clock before I even think about wanting food. And most of the times because my brain says, hey, it's middle afternoon, we probably should eat. It's not like I have to have food at that time. So if you eat those fats, which are very good, I know for a long time they've been vilified, healthy fats make your body very satisfied, feel very full, lots of good energy, lots of other good things in them. It actually helps sustain you. You're not going to be as hungry, which is going to be important for people with diabetes who struggle with this. Instead of eating a bunch of little meals throughout the day, which people tell you to, it's better to eat lots of fats so you don't have to eat quite as often, and it actually makes a much better way. So dietary guidelines, like I said, try to limit the amount of simple sugars you eat, your breads, your pastas, your sugars. Also try to limit your also fruit intake, and like I said, increase your fats. Here's another thing, and this is going to be in our notes section. There's actually a food program is developed by a guy back in the 1920s and 1930s, where he was the first guy that I know of that really developed what it was called like diabetic boot camps. Basically, he took these people who are diabetic, put them basically in a camp and locked them down and said, for 10 days you're going to only eat these certain foods. And in 10 days, 95% of the people that was there decreased their blood sugar levels enough that they were actually go completely off of their diabetic medications and their blood sugar levels return to normal. In 10 days, people. This is not years it takes, but in 10 days you can do it. But basically the issue was you had to limit, very, very severely limit the certain foods that you eat. So basically there's a chart here that again you can download that will show you exactly what it is. There are certain vegetables that are better than others, like beets and carrots. Very high sugar content, taste really good, but they're not really actually the best thing for you. Again, small amounts are okay, but if you struggle with sugar levels, you do not want to consume those, at least short term. This dietary thing also goes on to show, again, unlimited amounts of proteins. Again, butters, cheeses, all those kind of fats are actually really good. Things like olive oil, coconut oil, sesame seed oil and stuff are actually really good. So it's those good fats and stuff that are actually more sustainable. So just following what's called phase 1 of this diet, if you really struggle with this, a little bit more restrictive, but again, you're going to get the best results, and these actually help a lot of people increase their weight loss also too during this process. And then there's what's called phase 2 of this diet. This is called actually the Melvin Page diet. You can actually Google that and look that up. But basically, again, there's a little bit more leeway. You're actually allowed a little bit more starches and vegetables. So again, you can start with phase 1 usually for about 2-3 months, and then you can graduate into phase 2 for a couple more months as your body heals. It becomes more insulin sensitive, more leptin sensitive, so you don't have to be quite as restrictive. But again, it's a very, very good guideline of actually how to eat. And again, 10 days of eating like this, if you really dedicate yourself, can make a huge difference in your levels. Right? The other thing people struggle with is sweeteners. I like sweet things. How do I cook with sweet things without really wrecking my pancreas and increasing my sugar levels? First thing is xylitol. That's one of our favorite sugars that we use in our household. Xylitol is naturally produced in your body. There are 2 types of xylitol. There's corn-based xylitol and there's birch-based xylitol. You want the birch-based. Corn is usually most genetically modified. I don't like that. Good with the more birch-based xylitol. It has a glycemic index of 7, meaning it's very, very low. It doesn't stimulate your pancreas very much at all. What really makes it nice is you can convert it 1 to 1. If it calls for a teaspoon of sugar, you can put a teaspoon of xylitol in it and it's going to actually taste the same. The only thing is you can't use it in breads and you can't use it in large amounts. So try to be very cautious on how much you use to your body. It develops being able to handle it, because if you do too much of it, it will actually cause loose bowels. The other one is probably even the best one, is actually called stevia. Stevia has a glycemic index of 0, meaning you can drink gallons of this stuff and it will not even touch your pancreas. Your pancreas won't do anything with it because stevia is really an herbal thing that tastes sweet. It actually has no sugar in it. So you can actually use it to sweeten things without worrying about damaging your pancreas. It takes a little bit to get used to it. It has a little bit of a bitterness to it, but once you kind of use it for a while, you will not taste that at all. Another one we like is actually coconut sugar. Its glycemic index is a little bit higher. It goes clear up to 35, so you got to be cautious not using too much of it. But again, a 1-to-1 conversion, so it makes it really nice. Raw honey can also be very beneficial, but again, use it in limited amounts. It jumps clear up to a glycemic index of 55, so there will be that sugar dump into your system. But again, it's really important you get the raw type of honey, and there can be small benefits to it. So use it very sparingly. And last one, the only thing that I might use is actually maple syrup. Maple syrup, again, is more of a natural thing. There is some trace minerals in it if you actually get the dark amber maple syrup, so there can be some support to it. So again, but still stick to mainly the first 2 if you can. If you really struggle with it, and use these last 3 very, very sparingly, because the last one and the worst one of all is actually your white table sugar. Has a glycemic index of 65, so that's getting pretty high. Very high inflammatory, and it's linked to uses a lot of type 2 diabetes. We talked about heart disease, cancer, immune system dysregulation, and also yeast growth in your digestive system are all stimulated by the use of table sugar. So if you get rid of white table sugar and do nothing else, you're going to be tons of miles ahead of most people with their health, because it's just going to clear up a lot of inflammation, swelling in their system, swelling in the gut, usually comes from excess sugar. All right? The other component that we use here going on dietary things is actually some supplements. The first supplement we really recommend for people to use is SP Complete. Basically, it's a great product that's a source of proteins and vitamins, trace minerals, has things in it like kelp and alfalfa, whey, buckwheat, all those things that we eat on a regular basis, right? How many people eat kale or buckwheat? Hardly anybody. So what we do is we tell people to use these as meal replacements. So it's basically a shake. You can put this with a little bit of water, mix it all up. Has lots of green vegetables in it. You can actually get a lot of good stuff and replace, again, a meal that you would usually eat. Lots of carbohydrates, lots of sugars. This has a very low glycemic index. The next product we use actually has Diaplex. The real key about this is it actually has a lot of chromium in them. Chromium is a natural mineral that actually helps your body become more sensitive to insulin. So it's a natural way to actually have your body be able to listen to insulin a little bit more and be more reactive when your body is producing insulin. This takes stress off your pancreas. It doesn't have to produce as much. And what's so cool about Diaplex is it helps out with your digestion, helps out with support your liver, your pancreas. But we give this to patients who have high sugar levels. We give this to patients who have low sugar levels that struggle with hypoglycemic, and it seems like it really balances, it really brings them in between. The other, which is really, really neat, is called Janema. Right? Janema is actually an Indian herb that basically is what really blocks sugar. It's a really cool thing. You put a little Janema on your tongue, you hold it there for about 30 seconds, and then you take a piece of candy. The candy will taste like, especially if it's chocolate, will taste like wax. It has no sugar taste at all. And basically it'll block it for almost a half hour, almost up to 2 to 3 hours in some people. So Janema is really cool. It blocks sugar taste, so it decreases your sugar cravings. It also blocks and actually decreases sugar absorption in your digestive system. The other thing which is really neat about Janema is it actually is the only thing that I found that actually helps re-heal and regenerate your pancreas. It actually helps your pancreas start producing insulin levels on its own. So we use this a lot. To me, this is a staple when we're talking about diabetes correction. The other product we use is LiveCo. LiveCo stands for liver. It's the best product we use to actually cleanse the liver. If your liver is actually functioning and actually healthier, it's actually going to handle blood sugar much better, much more regularly. And then the last one we really recommend is the hemp seed. I kind of mentioned about that, putting it in our smoothies. Hemp seed is one of only 2 foods that I know is called a perfect food, meaning that if you just consume hemp seed for the rest of your life, you could survive and basically your body would not need any other nutrition other than hemp, right? So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So hemp seeds, hemp hearts are basically all the same product, but basically again it has a very high fat content, lots of proteins, lots of polysaccharides. So again, it gives your body that sense of fullness. And you really don't need a lot of this. What I recommend in your shakes and stuff is actually just putting 5 teaspoons in. It gives you that great sense of fullness. Again, you don't need to eat as much when you eat this little, just 5 tablespoons of hemp. So it's a very, very, very cool thing. So what we're doing is some people again struggle with this. So what we've done is kind of created a package. So by watching this video, if you kind of want to maybe take advantage of some of these products, we actually have come up with a package. Basically, you can buy all these together. And they all retail together if you buy them individually for about $241. But after watching this video, if you contact our office and say, yeah, I watched that video, I want to get these packets, I want to get some of these supplements to help me along with this process. Basically, if you call the office, we can give it to you for $190, plus we'll also throw in a free bag of hemp. But again, you have to mention this video, you have to mention that you watched it to get that sale price, or we will charge the full $240. So again, just our little way of saying thank you for watching this video, and it's actually a great, great way. It comes together an entire package. We throw in recipes, actually how to make your shakes. We throw in basically how often you're supposed to take each one of these supplements, when you're supposed to take it. So again, we make a complete package to do this. So this package here, the $190, is basically good for 30 days, meaning this package you buy will have enough supplements and stuff for an entire 30 days. Another thing I need to mention, we're talking about these supplements and dietary things to really rebalance and get over diabetes. It takes more than 30 days. It really takes about a commitment of about 10 months to a year of really taking these supplements and stuff to really reduce the stress in your pancreas and get insulin sensitivity back up where it should be. So just be aware of that. That's the commitment level, but if you do, we're going to show you the great results that are actually possible by doing it. The other thing we didn't talk about is also very important you want to consider is actually taking probiotics. Probiotics Lots of articles, you can Google that, and its relationship to diabetes. If your gut is out of balance, that's where probiotics live. It's going to affect your insulin levels and how well your body digests things. Vitamin D is so important. Again, probably every video and everything that class that we discuss, vitamin D is mentioned because it's a very vital hormone. It also plays major roles in your body, how especially diabetes relates to insulin sensitivity. The other thing which is very, very important, which is exercise. Again, if we get your cells consuming more energy, they're going to absorb up more glucose on their own. You're not going to need as much insulin. We also talked about leptin, how exercise actually stimulates the hormone leptin to make you feel more full, so you're not going to want to eat as much. Here's what I found is actually key with exercise is, one, you don't have to do it for long periods of time, and you don't have to do it every day. This is the cool thing, because everyone makes the excuse, I don't have time to exercise. The truth about it is that's BS. Basically, if you have 15 minutes a day, probably 3 to 4 days a week, that's all you really need. Exercise, the key component of it is you need to do high intensity, meaning you need to exercise really, really intensely for a short period of time. And if you do that, get your heart rate up, get your energies really, cells stimulating that energy, then basically you're going to do what you need to do. You don't need to be on a treadmill for 2 hours to get this type of result. So the type of exercise I like is called high intensity interval training, where basically for 30 minutes or 30 seconds you do a warm-up. For the next 30 seconds you go as hard as you can. Whether you're riding an elliptical, whether you're walking, speed walking, running, you're going to go pretty hard. Next thing what you're going to do is then you're going to have a rest period for probably 2 to 3 minutes. And then after that what you're going to do is then go all hard out for about another 30-40 seconds. And again, then you're going to rest for 2 to 3 minutes. So it's just kind of that interval back and forth that's really going to stimulate your heart and your energy production the right way versus exercising at a constant rate for 30-40 minutes. So that's really what you want to do. If you want more research on this, go ahead and just Google high intensity exercises, and you can basically look that up and it can actually walk you through those guidelines. Okay? And then last but not least, as we talk about chiropractic and diabetes. Is there any research out there of actually how chiropractic helps diabetes? And the answer is yes. We've had lots and lots of great case studies of patients just after an adjustment, their blood sugar levels normalize. How is that? Again, if we get better nerve supply to your pancreas, to your liver, from your brain, right, it makes sense those areas and organs are going to work better. So I have tons and tons of patients say, Doc, after the adjustment, my blood sugar dropped by 20 points and it's staying low. How is that possible? And it just goes back to making your body more functional, working better through chiropractic is what we do. It really helps, again, can balance that and really make a big difference. And again, this is just one person's blood work up here just to kind of show you. And what I want to point out to you, this is basically in 10 days time of doing this program. Basically, their energy levels went from a 3 up to an 8. Their sleep went from a 3 up to 8, more restful sleep. Their energy improved. Their irritability went down. And really what the cool important thing is you can kind of see their weight. They dropped 9 pounds just in 10 days. And actually their blood sugar level dropped by almost 20 points. So we have tons and tons of patients who, again, have levels in the 200-300 level. After about 4 or 5 months can get them back down to close to 100, and when they get down to 100 they actually get off all their medications. I have lots of people that have been on metformin, insulin shots for long periods of time. If you put the effort, put the dedication in there, you can actually get off of that, and we see it on a regular basis. So just to summarize it again, if you really want to take diabetes in a new direction, you're tired of being on the medication, we talked about how the medication only makes the problem worse. Again, the 4 components are dietary things. Make sure you're sticking to things that are very low glycemic index. Get rid of your grains, your pastas, your breads. Stick more of your proteins and fats. Try some of the supplements and stuff that we label, like I said, whether it's the Genema, which decreases your sugar cravings, helps your pancreas heal, your Diaplex, which helps your body more insulin sensitivity, de-stresses your pancreas, Livco to make your liver more functional, and like I said, also the supplements like the SP Complete and also the hemp seed, which will actually help you feel more full and give you the great nutrients your body needs, not filling up with empty calories. We also talked about exercise. Again, 15 minutes, 4 days a week is basically all you need to do if you do the high intensity training, and then obviously chiropractic. That's obviously a major key to making your body overall healthy and well. So that is really the game plan. Like I said, again, lots and lots of people have done this, have very high success rate of turning this system around and getting your body function healthy. And it's, again, not just like the medication, we're just treating symptoms. It is really helping your body become healthy. So obviously, if you just want to try the supplements as a standalone package, you can call our office. We can pick that up and we can help you out with that. If you really struggle and really want to have an opportunity to sit down with me where I can look at your entire picture, we can sit down and make a really great game plan for you, what it's going to take to get healthy. That's also available. Call our office and set up some type of nutritional evaluation. It usually takes me about an hour at a time. I sit down and very thoroughly cover not only diabetes but every other condition, whether it's hormones, whether it's your digestion, whether it's elimination, whether it's energy level, sleep level. We look at all these kind of things to actually improve your overall health and well-being. We look at blood work. Again, we try to balance that all out. So again, if that's something that's of interest to you, again, call our office and set up some type of evaluation. And again, if you mention that you watched this video, normally this evaluation costs $120. We'll basically give it to you for $60 for watching this video, again, as our way of thank you. So again, make sure you take time to download the handouts that's actually also for this video. Read over this. If you do have any questions, I'm available through emails, or if you want to call the office, I would obviously talk to you over the phone. I don't have any problem with that. And again, if you know someone that really struggles with diabetes, doesn't like being on the medication, is only going to feel worse and is feeling worse taking more and more medications, please forward them this video also too so they can really get the help they need. Thank you.